Here we go. Welcome to BUS123, Introduction to Investments for Spring 2023. My name is Frank Paiano. I introduced myself somewhere else. So you can check me out later at another time. I am the instructor for your class. I am the luckiest person in the world because I get to teach what I love and do what I love. And it'll be the first time since the pandemic that will be face to face. So if you are taking this class, you can either show up at the classroom, and I hope you do, because I really like teaching face to face. I've missed it for some time now. But if you can't make it at that ungodly hour of 8:35 a.m. on Tuesday, Thursday mornings, you can follow along, go through the presentations before the class or during, or the ones that are live streamed and recorded for class. So it's up to you. So welcome. We're on a journey. We're going to introduce you to the major asset classes, investment choices. And by the end of our journey together, you will have a strong foundation of what kind of returns you can get and what kind of risk you're going to take. So let's get started. Oh, by the way, I'm now a professor emeritus. That's just a fancy schmancy title for I've retired from full-time teaching and now teach one or two classes a semester. Big deal. And they get to pay me less. That's how it works. But let's start with a perspective. It is a gloomy moment in history. Never has the future seemed so dark and incalculable. The United States is beset with racial, industrial, and commercial chaos, drifting we know not where. Of our troubles, no one can see the end. When did you think this was said? Last night on Skunk News? I'm sorry, Weasel News. Badger News? Fox News, right. No. Some people might say 9/11. Many people will tell you, will guess the Great Depression, World War II. It was actually 1847. And there's some controversy about whether it was 1847 or 1857. But it was written in a very popular magazine at the time, Harper's Magazine. And yeah, they had serious problems. The nation, the United States, was about ready to tear itself apart over the issue of slavery. Don't call it slavery, call it the peculiar institution. Yeah. Did they have serious problems in the 1840s? Oh yeah. Do we have serious problems now? Oh yeah. But so far, equating serious with fatal has been wrong. In fact, the global economy, and certainly our economy, but the world economy is infinitely, exponentially better than it was 200 years ago. The last 200 years, the last 100 years, the last 20 years have been the most prosperous years in the history of our civilization. And I believe, doesn't mean I'm right, but I believe the next 20, 30, 40 years are going to be even better. Assuming we don't blow ourselves up, die in our own waste, tsunami, meteorite, earthquake, disco returns. Yeah, these exogenous events, which we really have no control over. I'm firmly convinced that the next 20, 30 years are going to be the best years. The technologies that are coming down the pike are just mind-boggling. And we've got tremendous issues to deal with. And we're going to have to deal with them. It's that simple, or else not survive. And I don't want to believe that we're not going to survive. I'm an optimist. And what the pessimists say was, you're just not being realistic. Well, we'll see. Chapter number 1. In investing money, the amount of interest you want should depend upon whether you want to eat well or sleep well. What a great line from J. Kenfield Morley. Now, if I were to be so bold as to suggest a an improvement, I would change the word interest to reward, because interest is just one of the types of investment rewards we get. So in investing money, the reward we get, the amount of reward, the amount of gain we want, should depend on whether we want to eat well or do we want to sleep well. You can't have it both ways. But, with some of the techniques that we learn in this class, we're going to help you, I believe, so far it's worked out for me and others, we're going to help you eat reasonably well and sleep reasonably well. There's no guarantees. So in chapter 1, we introduce you to the idea of investing. We will then take a look at an overview of the investment universe, I like to call it. Look at the major categories very, very cursorily. Did I say that word right? Very, very, it wrote it down correctly. Yes, we're going to learn a little bit about all the major investments. And then, of course, as the semester goes on, dear students, we have a lot more to learn. We have a whole lot more to learn. But the first chapter, we're just going to learn a little bit about all the different types. And then we're going to learn about what kind of return we can get from each type and what kind of risk we're going to have to take to get that return. Cool? It's a journey, and what I hope you'll find as we go through the semester is that it's a lifelong journey. For many people who enjoy what we do in this class, there's no end to how much you can learn in the investment world. None. And the cool part about it is that there's a place for you in the industry. The industry is needing people. They need more diversity. They need more women. They need more minorities, bilingual, trilingual, veterans. They love veterans and disabled, challenged individuals. So there's a whole lot of old us white guys who are retiring or dying. And so you have a tremendous opportunity to become a professional in this industry. Yeah. Are you worried about the math? Don't be. All you need is a 99-cent calculator, folks. Now, eventually I hope you're going to learn how to use a spreadsheet. We're going to show you how to use the spreadsheets just because it makes life easier, but you don't have to. Mr. Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of our time, has a desktop calculator on his desk. He doesn't use a computer. And so there you go. So let's get started with the most basic question on slide number 4. What is an investment? Well, here's a very good definition, and it's going to be the one on the exam. So, and if you see anything that's highlighted or italicized or bolded, it means there's probably going to be a question on the exam. An investment is any vehicle into which resources can be placed with the expectation that it will generate positive income or that its value will be preserved or increased or both. So we see that investments come in 2 basic flavors: cash flow, interest, dividends, rent, income, and growth, capital appreciation, capital gains, yippee, increased value. But we could also have capital losses, boo, is decreased value. And here is a definition by none other than Benjamin Graham, who wrote the book, The Intelligent Investor. And there's a bibliography that we're going to cover eventually. And it's one of the books that you must read, but not the first book you're going to read. The first book you're going to read is the book that comes with the class, and that's free. Hey, what a deal. And The Intelligent Investor is readily available at every library, so check it out. But here's Mr. Graham. But by the way, Mr. Graham was none other than Mr. Warren's teacher, Mr. Warren Buffett's teacher. So no slouch this guy was. An investment operation is one which, upon thorough analysis, promises safety of principal and a satisfactory return. Operations not meeting these requirements are speculative. We're going to use these terms over and over again throughout the semester. Are you an investor? Are you looking to get a respectable, reasonable return from your investment over time? Or are you a speculator, a trader, Trader, not traitor like the people on January 6th? Those people are trying to make eye-popping returns. They're trying to get rich quick, and I wish them a lot of success. And if you're one of them, let me first disabuse you of any idea that you're going to learn how to do it here. I can't do it. I'm not even going to try. And I know that most people in this world can't. There are a scant few of them, but don't think you're going to be one of them. Okay? And we'll discuss this idea of, are you an investor or are you a speculator, in detail. Slide number 5. There are 3 major types of investments: securities, property, and personal investments. Now, securities, that's what a dumb name. I wish I just call them financial investments. Because people go, securities, I'm not an administration of justice major. No, not that type of security. Security is the term we use for investments that represent debt or ownership, or the legal right to acquire or sell an ownership interest. Well, it is overly legal. We don't need to delve into this. Just memorize it and realize that these are financial investments. So stocks, bonds, mutual funds, other types of securities include derivatives. I hate derivatives, and we'll discuss those in detail in a bit. Not in detail, but cursorily pretty soon. But that's what we're going to concentrate on. In this semester, we're going to concentrate on securities. For the vast majority of us, doing our job, living our lives, raising our kids, whatever, securities are the choice for us. In fact, for most of us, it's going to be mutual funds. We'll see, chapter 2. But then there's a whole other world out there in property, sometimes called real assets or hard assets, tangible assets, commodities. So these are items that you can bang on, hit, punch. Real property, land, buildings. Why is it called real as opposed to imaginary? No, real just means it's attached to the ground, or it is ground. It's either land or it's buildings that are attached to the ground. And then personal property such as precious metals, automobiles, art, collectibles, Beanie Babies, baseball card collections. For the vast majority of us folks, it might be a great hobby, but most of these things don't turn out very well. And real estate is a whole world unto itself. And we'll do our best near the end of the semester, or if you're interested before then, to discuss real estate as an investment. But I like to say it's tricky, which is a nice way of saying it's a real pain in the... Yeah. But that doesn't mean you can't do well with it. In fact, you can. But be prepared. Now, the last category here is one that people don't usually think about, but it's personal investments, education, training, travel. And sometimes people will ask me, what was the best investment you ever made? And I'll say going to college. Because it made me a better person. I think so. I don't know. Maybe I would have done fine if I hadn't gone to college, but I really enjoyed what I learned. And then I went back for my master's degree and it turned into a career. And I think it was the best investment I've ever made. So there you go. But we're going to, as we say, concentrate on securities, financial investments. And do please remember, represent debt or ownership or the legal right to acquire or sell an ownership interest, which is a legal term. But just think in terms of these are financial investments. Investments can also be categorized into whether they are primary assets, where you are investing in a business or you're lending your money to someone, or a derivative asset. These are those things that we hope you stay away from, folks. These are securities that derive their value from an underlying security or what? What are you talking about? Okay, first, debt instruments, debt assets are where you loan your money. When you put your money in the bank, you're basically loaning your money to the bank. That's how it works, right? They pay you interest, not very much more these days. Bonds are loans. You're lending your money to a corporation, to a state or local government, a school district, a water authority, or the federal government, right? Equity investments are investments where we are the owner. And these are stocks. And you've heard of stocks. Everybody's heard of them. But I hate that term, stocks. I like to use the word businesses. These are businesses you're investing in. But legally, they are corporations. And you hopefully, maybe not, but you might take Business 140, business law, and you'll learn all about this, and you'll learn a lot about it in Business 120, Introduction to Business, but you know, businesses. Then there are other types of equity ownership investments, such as partnerships, sole proprietors, where you're the business, real estate investment trusts. What are those? Well, they're kind of like a real estate investment where somebody else does the property management for you. So those are the primary assets. The derivatives derive their value from these other assets, from the bonds or the stocks or the other types of primary assets. So they're not the actual assets, they're just pointing to the other assets, which drives people insane, but that's how it works. And so these two, that's all you have to know for chapter 1, options and futures, are primary examples, or I shouldn't use the word primary again, but they're typical examples of derivative assets. But there are many others. And all you need to know is that they're really dangerous. And somebody's going to say, oh, you're going to make a ton of money by investing in derivatives. And first of all, you say you can't invest in derivatives. They're speculations. And the second thing is, no, you can lose a ton of money. And who knows, you might do it. You know, if you like going to Vegas, then you might like derivatives. Slide number 7. Are investments direct or are they indirect? Now, what's a direct investment? The direct investment is where you are in control of the investment. You buy the real estate. You buy the corporation, the stock. You buy the bond. And your name is on the title of the real estate property, or your name is on the brokerage account or whatever. But indirect investments, someone else is in control. Someone else is making the decisions for you. You have limited control, or more likely no control, over the underlying investment. And the poster child for this is our mutual funds. You invest in the mutual fund, yes, and so your name is on the account where the mutual fund is. But the mutual fund managers, they are doing the work. They are deciding what to invest in. The same thing is true for REITs, real estate investment trusts. Fancy way of saying I'm investing in real estate, but I'm not the landlord. And then partnerships, limited partnerships typically are like this. You're a limited partner, the general partner, and again, you would learn about this in business law and Introduction to Business. They're in control. So, and some people get confused. Well, I can buy and sell my shares in the mutual fund or the REIT or the limited partnership. Yes, but yes, they're just the shares in the entity, the mutual fund, the real estate investment trust, the limited partnership. But you don't control what they invest in. You can't call your mutual fund or say, I think you ought to buy Apple. And they'll say, thank you very much. Excuse us, we got work to do. Then we categorize investments into 3 domesticities, which is a fancy way of saying where do they get their mail. There are domestic investments, international, and global. Wait a minute, what's the difference between global and international? Because when we hear the word international, or we usually think, oh, that's global. No, it's a subtle distinction, and you need to be careful of it. Because in the investment world, international, sometimes called foreign, sometimes called overseas. You'll see it in various ways, but international is the most typical one. That means everybody outside the United States. So domestic, obviously inside the United States, and international outside the United States, whereas global is todo el mundo. United States and everybody outside the United States. And this is a great quote from a mutual fund manager who is retired now, but he said, "The world is a very small place these days economically." And we get this from Forbes. 65% by value of the parts in the Ford Mustang come from the United States and Canada. 90% of the parts in the Toyota Sienna, which is built in Indiana, come from the US and Canada. So which is more American car? How do you get more American than a Ford Mustang? You buy a Toyota Sienna. And it used to be, many years ago, that automatically you thought domestic, safer, international, foreign, riskier, and global, somewhere in between. But that's not necessarily the case anymore because the world is global. Whether we like it or not, folks, and there are some issues. Obviously, the pandemic threw us a curveball. But the reality is sometimes the United States has less risky investments, and sometimes it has more risky investments. And some companies are based outside the United States and they do the majority of their business inside the United States. And there's at least one company that's based in the US that doesn't sell any products in the US. It's getting all mixed up. So, in my humble opinion, you don't want to limit yourself to companies based on where they get their mail. You want to see where they're earning their money and where their where their customers are and where their suppliers are and who are their global competitors. Because if we're going to make it, folks, and I'm optimistic that we do, we're going to have to learn to live with one another, and we're going to have a global world. I think so. We'll see. Some people don't agree with me, and that's why there's chocolate, vanilla, and some people like strawberry. But I'm right. Anyway, slide number 9. Let's do a little game here. Let's take a look at these companies here, okay? Look at all these companies, and you know all these. I think pretty much you know them. Who do you think is domestic? Who do you think is foreign? What do you think, huh? Well, let's go through. Budweiser. Oh, Mother Bud. How can you get more American than Budweiser? No, it's actually a foreign company now. It's based in Belgium with a Brazilian accent. Shell Oil. Shell Oil is actually Royal Dutch Petroleum, which has been around for over 100 and some odd years. I don't remember. And it's based in the UK, United Kingdom, and the Netherlands, Royal Dutch Petroleum. Ben & Jerry's is foreign. It's now owned by Unilever, which is based in the UK. Farmers Insurance is a Swiss company. Arco is now part of British Petroleum. Gerber is now owned by Nestle. Firestone is Japanese. Cup of Soup is English. Fox News is Australian. I mean, think about it, folks. If you don't watch Fox News, if you don't believe every word they say, then you is not an American. You is a commie, pinko, liberal. They're based in Australia. Seagram's used to be based in Canada, but now the company's been balkanized. It's a fancy word for split up into pieces. And one part was actually American for a while, but now I think that part's been bought by some company down in Latin America. Bayer is German. Vaseline is UK. Friskies is Swiss. Trader Joe's is German. Aldi's, have you seen Aldi's? That's the same company. And 7-Eleven. Now, what a great story. 7-Eleven started in the United States, actually, I think somewhere in it used to be called Southland Corporation, based somewhere in Texas. I think Dallas, I'm not sure. Anyway, they in the 1980s moved over. They didn't move over. They started a branch, Japanese, 7-Eleven Japan. It turns out that the Japanese love small stores. They don't like these big stores, which we love these big boxes, but 7-Eleven in Japan did so well that eventually they turned around and bought the United States company. So now it's based in Japan. It still has the roots deep in the American economy. And if you've ever been to Mexico lately, the 7-Eleven people saw how popular Oxxos were, or still are. And so now you see them everywhere in 7-Elevens, everywhere. Not as many as Oxxos, though. Oxxos are on every corner in Mexico. And then how about Volvo and Saab? The two companies you would be sure would be foreign, they were actually domestic. Well, actually not anymore. For about 20 years, GM owned Saab and Ford owned Volvo, but Volvo is now owned by a Chinese company, and Saab doesn't make cars anymore. They now are still around. They make jets and other important products, but they don't make cars. And it's very sad because Saab cars were really awesome. They really were, but they never made any. And when you take the it's the accounting second semester accounting, they talk about the fixed costs and the variable costs. And when you're a car company, you have to make a certain amount of cars just to break even because of all the huge fixed costs. And Saab was only able to do that a few years in their existence, which is very sad, but that's capitalism. So there's a link to a wonderful place called Visual Capitalist, and some of their visuals are really cool, and some of them are not so great, but this one's great. It shows you how big, vis-a-vis other countries, how big the world economy is, and then the different parts of the world economy. And so check it out, and you'll see that some countries you think are big countries in terms of economic are not. For example, Russia, which is Russia, you would think it's the world's largest country by area. It's actually got an economy the size of about Italy, which is a whole lot smaller. So check it out. Slide number 10. So continuing with our discussion of global investing, here are the top 18 countries according to per capita income in alphabetical order. Which country do you believe has had the best average annual return over the past 50 years? 1970 to 2021. Although I had a hard time finding everything about Singapore. But other than that, I was able to use the data from Morgan Stanley Capital International, MSCI. Who do you think had the best average annual return? Well, it's not the United States. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Please go to the next slide. There it goes. My apologies. Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands. What's going on here? What? Those are socialist countries where they have socialized medicine and college students actually don't have to sell their soul to go to college. Oh my goodness. Well, the United States is no great slouch. Certainly 10.7% is pretty darn good, but my goodness. Now what's going on with Italy, Austria, Spain? Why are they so far down on the bottom of the total poll? It has to do with demographics, because even though we're studying investing, which is a branch of economics, the poor relations part, and if you go up in the university levels, economics is really driven by demographics. And if you go to Italy, they will sell you a house for, I think, $1 or something like that, €1. You got to spend 10, 20,000 dollars to get it up to snuff, but they're losing people. And so it's hard to grow an economy when you're losing population. And so what has the United States done to increase our population over our 200 some odd years of existence? Right, immigration. We have welcomed people from all over the world, and from time to time we have disinvited them. And so right now we're having a little bit of a bug and tussle over how many people we should let in, but it's ultimately made us the strongest country in the world economically, culturally, I would add, and militarily. But hey, it can get very political. Now, some people might look at this and say, well, Payano, you're some kind of fuzzy-headed, bleeding heart liberal. You want everybody to do well, and that can't be the case. And I say, well, we don't know that, first of all. We're doing our best to raise the standard of living around the world. And it's something that is humanitarily important, I believe, as good Christians would say. But more importantly, I want to make money. I want people all around the world to be able to buy Colgate toothpaste and Nike shoes, right? And watch Disney and listen on their cell phone to Brittany Houston or, I don't know, whoever the most important pop star of the world is coming out of the world of pop. I want to make money. And that's why I am very, very globally oriented. I believe you need to look all around the world. And if you go back in time, before the Great Recession, the global financial crisis, if you go back in time to about the 1970s when people started investing in other parts of the world than the country that they were involved in, they were part of, you find that the United States and the international communities basically returned very similar returns. Since the global financial crisis, since the Great Recession, the last 10, 12, 14 years, the United States has clobbered the rest of the world. It hasn't even been close. I am of the opinion, doesn't mean I'm right, that the next 10, 20 years or so, we're going to see a reversion to the mean, it's called. Basically, the rest of the world is going to catch up. I don't know how we're going to do. I think we'll do well, but not as well as we've done the last 10, 12 years. We'll see. That's why they call it the future. But I'm very optimistic about the global economy and ultimately the standard of living growing around the world to the point where we investors are going to be selling Nestle and Nike and all the companies that we take for granted, and that they want some too. And we'll see. I know it might sound utopian. I'm not trying to sound utopian. I'm just trying to say, hey, there's an awful lot of people who are living in poverty. By the way, a few years ago, before the pandemic, 50%, according to the World Bank, okay, the global middle class made up 50% of the population of the world, which was an achievement never done in the history of the United States, not the history of human race. We've backtracked since the pandemic, sadly, but I'm very optimistic, as I've said. So I'll stop now and continue with slide number 11, because now this is arguably the most important aspect of our potential investments. Our time frame. Before we make an investment, we must know when we need the money. We must know our time horizon. And in the industry, there are various guidelines, and the one that is the top of the page here, short term, intermediate term, long term. This is the one that's generally used in the industry. Short term is up to a year or so. Intermediate term is 2 to 5 years, and long term is 5 or more years. I tend to take a little longer view, 1 to 2, maybe even 3 years for short term. Intermediate term, 3, 5, 6, 7. And then for me, long term is 10, 20, 30 years. And by the way, the life insurance industry, which I don't really have too much in common with, even though I am an insurance agent, by the way, they generally use the second guidelines, the one that I like. Short term, 1, 2, or even at 3 years, depending on the importance of the money. Intermediate term, 3 to 5. So you decide which one. The one we will use is this one, the one at the top. Up to a year or so, 2 to 5 years, 5 years or longer for long term. Before you make an investment, you must know the time horizon. Now, there's another category that we need to take a look at, and that is whether the investments are liquid or illiquid. And we're not talking about investing in wine or beer. No, we're talking about how easy it is, how quickly you can convert your investment into cash. Liquid investments have a ready market to purchase the investment, and the change of ownership happens quickly. So in other words, you have 100 shares of Home Depot. There's a whole army out there, a whole industry out there that's ready to take your shares and sell them to somebody else and give you the cash very quickly. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate investment trusts are similar to stocks, although legally they're not the same, but they're basically, as we said, real estate investments where you're not the landlord. Illiquid investments are investments that may be difficult or sometimes almost impossible to convert into cash without taking a major haircut, without losing quite a bit of value. The market for the investment is small, or the change of ownership happens slowly, or both. And the poster child for illiquid investments is real estate. Now, some areas of the country, San Diego included, at times all you had to do on Thursday afternoon was put a for sale sign, and by Saturday you had 10 offers, and Sunday you wrote the sales agreement. But that's not the case usually in real estate. It takes months to change hands usually. Partnerships can be difficult, easy to buy, sometimes hard to sell. And then collectibles. You go on this website and it says, yeah, your Beanie Babies are worth this much money. Sure, go try to sell them, right? See who'll pay. That's how much he'll sell you his Beanie Babies for. But when you try to sell yours, yeah. So is the investment liquid or is it illiquid? And as we said, most of the investments that we're going to look at, the securities, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, very liquid. Real estate, collectibles, And then finally, risk and return. Risk versus return. Do you want to eat well or do you want to sleep well? Risk is the chance that your actual investment returns will differ from the expected returns. Now, wait a minute. That's not what people think of when they think of risk. They think of the possibility of harm, loss, danger. But that's not how we define it in the industry. So please do remember this. The risk of an investment is that it will not perform the way you wanted it to. It might do better. It might do a whole lot worse, which is the possibility of suffering harm or loss or danger. In general, and there's no way to get around this, folks, and if anybody tells you differently, they're lying to you. The higher the expectation of investment returns, the higher the risk level. Do you want to eat well or do you want to sleep well? Now, here are guidelines that I use. Some people don't use the same, but they're squishy. You decide. These are the ones we'll use in this class. You might decide, well, Payano's too conservative, or maybe Payano's too aggressive. Low risk over the long term, 3 to 5%. Moderate risk, 5 to 8%. High risk, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%, folks. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Don't let anybody tell you, oh, it's a 10% no risk return. Wrong. And then anything greater than 12%, in my humble opinion, is speculative risk. And as we said, speculation is not often considered investing. I don't. Others might say, oh, no, Payano's too conservative. And we don't mean politically conservative. We're talking about financially, fiscally conservative. Anything above 12% is tough, folks. It's really, really hard to do. The best in the world. And, of course, you're going to see, and we're going to discuss this later, people telling you, if you're not getting 20%, you really don't know what you're doing. Yeah, well, that's right. They mean a 20% loss is what they're... I'm sorry. So, do you want to eat well or do you want to sleep well? We're going to spend most of the semester talking about the returns we get from the investments and the risks we have to suffer, have to tolerate to get those returns. And so finally, slide number 14. Ready for break? What type of investment is So now that we have these characteristics, these attributes of various investments, let's see if we can put them to the test. What is a Bank of America savings account? Huh? Yeah, a savings account is an investment, folks. Is it security or property? It's a security. It's a financial investment. You are lending your money to the Bank of America. And they, somewhere in their system, they have your name and how much money you have lent them, and they promise to pay you an interest rate, very pitiful these days, but getting better, and pay you back the principal. So is it debt or equity? It's a debt. You own the debt. Huh? That's, we're not used to that. We're not used to thinking it that way. But when you lend your money to somebody, that's an investment. That's a debt. Now they have to pay you back. That's what we're used to. We're used to debt being the ones we have to pay back. But when we lend our money, they're going to pay us back. Is it direct or indirect? Well, typically it will be direct. Your name will be on the account. So it is, unless somebody else is managing it for you. There are these things called trusts, but no, we're not going to deal with that. You learn that in a law class. We are the ones on the title. Is it domestic or foreign? Bank of Armenia? No, Bank of America. They used to be based in San Francisco. Now I think they're in Charlotte, North Carolina. So it's domestic. Short term, intermediate term, or long term? Well, folks, there are many people who put their money into savings accounts for the long term. They haven't taken BUS123, Introduction to Investments. They need to take it because savings accounts should be considered short term or emergency funds. We'll discuss that later on. Is it low, moderate, or high risk? Very low. In fact, it doesn't get much better than a savings account. Why? Because it is guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which is an entity that is sponsored by the U.S. government, up to $250,000 per account. So it's very low. Liquid or illiquid? It's very liquid. Yes, in fact, you can go down to your Bank of America office and say, I want my money today. Now, they're not going to want to give it to you as cash, folks. They're going to want to give you a cashier's check or whatever. If you ask for it in cash, they might not have it. They might, depending on what branch you go to, you ask for $77,000 in cash, they're going to go, oh, no, we don't have it. Come back tomorrow. And they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to say, we're going to hold on to it for one day. And then they're going to call the FBI because that's a suspicious activity, suspicious transaction. So don't do that. You don't need $77,000 in cash unless the world ends, and doesn't matter. You won't be able to buy anything, so don't worry about it. Okay, so it's liquid. Nestle's Foods, Nestles. You guys are not as old as I am. Oh, by the way, I'll probably introduce myself and say this, but this is 40 years I've been at Southwestern. Hard to believe. Anyway, Nestle, the world's largest food corporation. Where is it? Oh, first of all, is it a security or property? It's a stock. It's a corporation, so it's a security. Is it debt or equity? It is ownership. When we buy shares in Nestle, we are part owners of the corporation. Now we own a tiny, tiny little bit of the corporation. It's the world's largest food company. Is it direct or indirect? Our name is on the brokerage account. Our name's on the stock. Is it domestic or foreign? It's based in Switzerland, right? So it's a foreign, although it's been often called a company, which is a country unto itself. Short-term, intermediate term, or long-term? Well, in general, stocks should be considered long-term investments, but it's Nestle. So intermediate term. In general, we don't want to consider stocks short-term investments, although there are people who say, no, I don't own a stock for more than a few days, right? They're not investors. They're speculators. They are traders, Traders. The closed captioning didn't get it right. They are not owned. They want to rent it. They want to rent temporarily. It's like renting a car versus owning a car. They just want to own the stock for a few days or a few weeks or whatever. But yes, long-term stocks in general. Is it low, moderate, or high risk? In general, stocks should be considered high risk, but it's Nestle, so moderate. Yeah, I'll take moderate. Is it liquid or illiquid? Very liquid. Somebody wants your 5, 10, 100 shares of Nestle. You can turn around, sell it, and get the money. Okay, Southwestern College Proposition AA and R bonds. What are these things, folks? Well, we didn't hold a bake sale to build that stadium, and the math. Oh, that math and science, it's so ugly. I can't believe it. It looks like a prison with bars on it. I can't believe we knocked down these beautiful Mayan-inspired buildings to put up these monstrosities. But hey, I'm old. What can I say? Yeah, we borrowed money. And how did we do it? We sold bonds. The voters of the South Bay said, yeah, we love you, Southwestern Community College. We'll let you make these mortgages, basically, but they are, so that you can build the stadium and tear down all these beautiful buildings and put up ugly buildings. And so what type of investment is it? It's a security. They're bonds. They are financial investments that people buy. Is it debt or equity? It's debt. Huh? Yes, we are lending our money to Southwestern Community College. In return, they promise to pay us interest and pay us the principal back. So it's debt, yeah. It's kind of hard to get your head around, but you are playing the part of the bank. And we'll discuss this in detail when we get to bonds. Direct or indirect? Typically will be direct. Your name will be on the brokerage account that has the bonds. Is it domestic or foreign? Although there are some jokers who call us Tijuana Tech. There is an Instituto Tecnológico de Tijuana, and we are not them. We are Southwestern Community College, Chula Vista, and Environs. So it's domestic. Short-term, intermediate term, or long-term? Well, in general, most people who buy bonds buy them for the long term. And you could buy them for their intermediate term also, but in general, people buy bonds for long term. There is a way to buy bonds short term, and we don't normally do that. We retail investors, but mutual fund investors and pension fund investors, people with millions of dollars to invest, they might buy bonds for the short term, and we'll discuss that later. Is it low, moderate, or high risk? Well, bonds in general tend to be moderate, sometimes low. Some bonds are high. But in the case of Southwestern Community College, we are making these payments based on the property values and the property taxes in the South Bay Community College District, in the Southwestern Community College District, the South Bay here. So in general, they're pretty low. Now, when we go through a crisis like we did in 2008, there were people who were very worried about bonds such as this one from school districts and community colleges and the like. But no, they came through with flying colors. Is it liquid or illiquid? Generally very liquid. There are people who want to buy your bonds, so you can sell them. How about a duplex in Spring Valley? Rent one, live in the other. What a great investment. You get to live in it, not like a stock or a bond. Is it security or property? This is property, right? This is real estate. It's attached to the ground. Is it debt or equity? It's equity. We are the owners of the property. Direct or indirect? Our names are on the title down at the county admin building. It's public knowledge, and although some people try to hide their ownership through various legal maneuvers, ultimately we can find out who owns all the property. Domestic or it's Spring Valley. It's Spring Valley. It's domestic. Short term, intermediate term, or long term? Well, again, real estate is one of those investments we should think of as long term, in my humble opinion. But there are other people, flippers, not the dolphin flipper, but the house flippers, and who believe that they can make money buying it, fixing it up, and selling it. And I wish them a lot of luck, and I wish them a lot of success. But it's not easy, folks. And certainly it's not easy for people who don't have deep pockets, because it could be really, really a bad deal. It could turn out very badly, especially for people who don't know what they're doing. It's the first time and they lose everything. Low, moderate, or high risk? Well, in general, real estate should be considered, depending on the area you are, anywhere from moderate to high risk. Some people say, no, real estate's a very low risk. No, don't believe them. Real estate has its issues. And I'm not trying to dissuade you, but I will give you advice later on that if you really are interested in investing in real estate, get a job in the industry. Become a property manager or an appraiser or work at an escrow company or a title insurance company and learn the industry from the inside out. Liquid or illiquid? Right. Real estate is illiquid. Now, again, there are times when houses are selling like crazy here in San Diego and other parts of the country. But in general, we should consider real estate an illiquid investment. Qualcomm. What is Qualcomm? It used to be a stadium here. No. And supposedly it's all uppercase, which I have a hard time writing it because it looks really bad, all uppercase. But it's one of the largest companies based here in San Diego. And they make cell phones. No, they don't make cell phones. They make cell phone chips. No, they don't actually make them. They design them, but somebody else makes them. That's Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. They are the ones who invented what was called CDMA, which is now morphed into something else. But that's the system that works in Sprint and T-Mobile phones. And the other one, CDMA, stood for Can't Do Much of Anything. No, Code Division Multiple Access. Right? But it's morphed, and now it's merged with the other big one, which was developed by Nokia and Ericsson in Finland and Sweden, called GSM. That was used by AT&T and Verizon, and so it's all coalescing. But they are heavily involved in the communications industry, and so much so that they do their best to try to show people or try to trumpet the fact that, hey, your cell phone is because of us. Well, it's not just because of Qualcomm, but they're heavily involved in that. And believe it or not, they make more money outside the United States than they do inside the United States. So are they a security or property? They're a security. They are a stock. Debt or equity? Stocks are equity. You are part owner of Qualcomm. Direct or indirect? Your name is on the account. Your name is on the stock. You used to be able to get stock certificates. They looked kind of like a fancy title to something or other, but nobody does those anymore. Domestic or foreign? Well, they're based here in San Diego, but again, as we said, they make more money outside the United States than they do inside the United States. Short term, intermediate term, long term? Well, in general, in my humble opinion, you should consider stocks to be long-term investments. Warren Buffett says, if you're not thinking of holding onto this stock for 10 years, don't even think about holding it for 10 minutes. But again, there are other people who say, no, you're going to buy and sell. And good luck. Low, moderate, or high risk? I would consider it high risk. The tech industry is very high risk. Although the last 10 years, if you invested in tech, you did pretty well. But the last year, you did pretty poorly. Do you want to eat well or do you want to sleep well? Is it liquid or illiquid? Very liquid. Somebody wants your 10 or 20 or 100 shares of Qualcomm. And our last people have written me and called me and said they love this. One guy from the Midwest said he laughed for 3 days thinking about the loan to Uncle Harry. I guess every family has an Uncle Harry, right? Tio Lucas. Is it you made a loan, so it's an investment. Is it security or property? It's a security. It's a loan. It's debt. Uncle Harry's supposed to pay you interest and pay you back. Is it direct or indirect? Yeah, it's direct. You did it. Your name's on the promissory note, which is about worth as much as the paper that it's written on. Is it domestic or foreign? Well, until you get a postcard from the Philippines or Aruba or Portugal or someplace like that, he's still based here in the States. Short term, intermediate term, long term, or how about infinity? Low, moderate, high risk, or how about forget it, speculative, liquid or illiquid? Yes. Can you sell your debt to somebody else? Do you think anybody else in the family will take on the loan for Uncle Harry? No. Oh well. So now, hopefully what you're seeing so far is that the attributes that we've ascribed to the various types of investments are really not that difficult. They might be new to us. The idea of, for example, of the term security. Ooh, what the hell is a security? Or the fact that we're investing in debt. We're playing the part of the bank. But other than that, the time frames, the risk, the fact that the world is global, those things are pretty straightforward. And I submit to you, and we're going to discuss this, the intellectual part of investing is actually very straightforward. Study every day, learn the material, and you're going to understand the intellectual part. What's the hardest part of investing? The emotions. Because we're not rational beings. We're very irrational. We are ruled by our emotions. And there ain't nothing worse, folks. I'll tell you. Well, actually, physical torture, I'm assuming. But it isn't fun to watch your $1,000 become $600, or your $10,000 become $6,000, or your $100,000 become $60,000. But if you're investing in higher returning securities over the long term, it's going to happen. You don't know when. We don't know when. We know it's going to happen. And that is the emotional part of investing. So we will, again, as I said, I'm repeating myself, but we're going to give you tools and learn strategies to help us deal with those times when the organic matter hits the ventilating device. And the last thing you want to do is look at your portfolio. That's the time to put more money in. In our next presentation, we will now go into more detail about the various investment asset classes, the various choices that we have to invest in. Again, we're looking at, I call it the overview of the investment universe. We're looking at it from way far away, and we just need to learn the things that are in this presentation. Are you excited? I hope so, because I am. Thank you so much for being in our class, folks. We are, everyone at Southwestern, proud and honored and happy to have you here with us. And I am the luckiest guy in the world. And as I said, if you've watched my introduce myself, I'm going to do my best to make this the best class you have ever taken. That changes your life, and that 10, 20 years from now, you can look back and say, you know what? That introduction to investment class actually helped me in this crazy, joyous, absurd, beautiful, sad, nutty adventure that we call life. See you.